I am super excited to say that the only reason I am able to even come out with this episode is the sponsor of today's episode. So, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it is one of the greatest things to use to make a podcast. First, it's free. Second, they have all these tools that you can use to record, edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. I do it from my phone because it's much easier. I literally just bought one of those mics from the Apple store, plug it in, and now I just talk and it's great. Also, you can distribute the podcast wherever you want. Anchor does that for you. It can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I think Stitcher, so many other places. And you can make money from the podcast. And yeah, you can start it right away with an advertisement like this. So make sure you download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It is everything you need to make podcasts in one place. If you hear this disclaimer before the episode, it's because it was set to release a while ago. There were a lot of things that held me back, but I'm glad to be back on the right track now and producing content, hopefully at a very consistent weekly basis. So make sure you're tuning in every Wednesday to hear whatever episode of The Forensics Experience comes out. What's up, y'all? It's Dante, aka The Forensics Guy, and you are listening to The Forensics Experience, the podcast where we discuss topics in the speech and debate community with the world's most influential coaches, students, and alumni in the activity. And today, man, I am honored to be sitting with one of the legends in speech and debate, one of my favorite people, honestly, another person who's truly helped me become what I am in speech and debate in the community. But I'm just going to allow him. You probably already know who he is, but if you don't, if there's probably a couple people who don't know who he is, I'm going to give him an opportunity to let the community know who he is. I'm sitting here with Deano Pape, and Deano, feel free to tell the community, what do you do?
Sure. Well, thanks, Dante. It seems like I met you many, many years ago
Yes.
in the forensics community. We met back in Wisconsin, back when you were a college student. Actually, I coached for 17 years in the state of Wisconsin at Ripon College. And then I took a hiatus and I worked for the National Speech and Debate Association, national honorary for middle school and high school students. I did that for 3 years full time. And now I'm at Simpson College. I'm the assistant director of speech and debate there. And I am in year three. So that's sort of my story, although it's kind of a long story. Most people don't stay in the activity for as many years as I have, but it's been a pleasure to stay involved in this community for so many decades, and I look forward to many more to come.
That is awesome. I can definitely say, probably for the listeners, and just in speaking for the listeners, literally to say a big thank you for just dedicating so much of your time to this community. A lot, like you said, a lot of people I don't think usually stay in the community as long. So it's really great to see what I remember somebody calling lifers. You know, those people that will definitely be in the community forever and will continue to impact it. So definitely big shout out and big thanks just for that. And this is great because I really want to almost focus this episode on you specifically. But I think that it's going to really translate into some stuff that could be advantageous for some of the listeners here. But you've done a lot in the community, and I know that you said you were at Ripon for, wow, 17 years.
Mhm.
That's crazy. So, um, can you? I think I know, but you might know a little bit more than me. But whenever somebody asks me, I think I tell them like basically forensics kind of started in Ripon, if I'm not mistaken, and kind of stuff like that. Like, do you know the whole history of that? Can you like enlighten the audience on like where did forensics even start? How is this thing? How has this become?
Yeah, well, we've had speech and debate has had a long history, and it's been known as forensics for many years. And so I guess one thing I would say is that a lot of folks do know it as forensics, and for many years it was referred to, forensics was actually distinguishable from debate. So a lot of times people referred to debate and forensics. We in the National Speech and Debate Association, they changed their name from National Forensic League to the NSDA, largely because of the proliferation of forensic being used in a scientific context.
Yes.
And there is a marriage of that going back, to a couple thousand years, when forensic speaking was the style of speaking that was conducted in courts. And so there's a tie-in to the name forensics going back both to a scientific perspective or a legal perspective
Wow.
with the cause of death, as well as to the activity. But regardless as to that, the confusion of that, you can only go to work and get catalogs in the mail that say, hey, buy your latest forensic investigation equipment. And not realize that forensics is definitely a name that's been taken over by the CSIs of the world. So in some circles, it's still referred to as forensics, but in others, it's primarily now speech and debate. But regardless as to that, you're asking about the history. I mean, the Interstate Oratorical Association has been in existence since the 1800s.
Wow.
So we do have evidence of organized speech contests going all the way back then. That's where the top two persuasive speeches in every state are eligible to speak at the Interstate Oratorical Association. I was going to say conference, but at their tournament each year, it's at the end of April.
Okay.
And so, I mean, that goes back to the 1800s. You're mentioning Ripon. So what happened in Ripon is Ripon was one of the, though not exclusively but one of the founding members of Pi Kappa Delta, which is the National Honorary for Speech and Debate, and they host an annual tournament. And it's a comprehensive national tournament. It offers speech and debate events at Pi Kappa Delta, and that was back in the 19 teens. Ottawa University, I think, is largely credited as sort of being the first, if you have to pick a first, but Ripon was also one of the first.
Okay.
Ripon also, out of Ripon, Wisconsin, was born the National Forensic League. And so both Pi Kappa Delta and the National Forensic League are both born on Ripon College's campus, interestingly enough.
Okay. Awesome.
I mean, they had an office in there. 1925 was the origin of the NFL, and I don't remember the exact date. I want to say it was somewhere in the 19 teens, maybe 1914. Maybe it was even a little bit later than that. But yeah, in the 19 teens was Pi Kappa Delta. Pi Kappa Delta just celebrated its 100th. So if I could do the math quick, I could probably specifically target it out. But maybe it was 1918 or 1917. But regardless as to that, you asked about the history. It's a long history. I'm not a historian.
Fair.
But nevertheless, there is a long history that goes back to Ripon, Wisconsin. This small community located in rural Wisconsin has a long history with the activity.
Awesome. Shout out to Wisconsin. That's awesome. And really amazing. With that, I know that wow, it's really crazy to just see how much forensics is like. It has so much more of a vast history than I thought. Just hearing you even talk about the stuff that you do know. But I think another thing that I think a lot of people are probably interested in hearing, something that some people have actually asked me to specifically talk about potentially on the podcast, is that a lot of people are wondering about the benefits of speech and debate. Like, from parents to, especially out here, I'm in California now, and I feel like it's a very common question for parents to say, well, what are the benefits of this thing? How can my child use this to quote unquote succeed in life, and what type of careers are available? And I know you've been in this field for so long, so I'd love to hear your um, just I'd love to hear your advice or your beliefs on like what do you what careers do you see this best to fit in with? What potential careers would be able to follow from like different categories? What advice or what insight do you have on that as a whole?
Well, one of the things, Dante, that you have to realize is that there's a really wide universe of different forensic activities that you can
Yes.
participate in. And, when I was at Ripon, it was primarily speech. We played a little bit in parliamentary style debate at some local tournaments. We did some world schools debate toward the end of my time there. But there's an entire universe of different kinds of activities that you can participate in. There are over a dozen different organizations and different styles of debate and different focal points in terms of speech, in terms of the national tournaments and national qualifications and all of that. But there are also offshoots. I mean, you and I are very familiar with speech
Yes.
events, but you can do policy debate, and you can do different styles of parliamentary style debate, and the BP style world schools debates, and you can go to travel to other countries. And there's an international forensic association that
Yes. True.
brings American schools into primarily American schools into other countries to participate in international competitions. And then there's other offshoots. There's Model United Nations. There's mock
Yes.
trial. There's Ethics Bowl, which I started at Ripon and have continued now into Simpson. But I love Ethics Bowl. And the reason I bring all of those different things up is because different people play in the different universe of speech and debate activities. I think they all carry different benefits, and some would argue that some are more beneficial than others. But I think that the key goal is that people engage and participate in speech and debate activities. One
Very
of the
true.
things that we don't have a tendency to do as well is when we engage in conversation with each other, kind of like what we're doing right now, and especially in a polarized political environment, is we forget sometimes to maintain good, solid critical thinking skills and analytical
Yeah.
skills. And how do we maintain a calm demeanor in the presence of very angry individuals who might disagree with us, maybe not even fundamentally, but just disagree with us on a policy or on a candidate? And how do we confront that type of an issue and actually have a good reasoned dialogue? And so I think speech and debate really provides an opportunity, if it's practiced well, to be able to engage with each other in good, solid argumentation, and to have and maintain a strong demeanor at the same time. We don't have to get into each other's faces. We don't have to fight.
True.
And so, yeah, we may engage in the arena of competition at the time in the round, but when the round's over, we're still very collegial, and we're still recognizing how much we're developing our skill set. So, one of the first things I would mention is critical thinking, problem solving, and and really the analytical skills that derive from this activity, no matter what it is that you're doing. And I think this exists in speech as well as debate worlds. One of my favorite events is communication analysis, and that is all about original thinking and taking
Yeah.
a communication activity and analyze it using rhetorical strategies as your foundational analytical tool. But even POI, your listeners are, I'm sure, very familiar with program of oral interpretation. But you
Yes.
create an argument and you use literature to support that argument. That's still argumentation.
So
We
true.
Yeah, we expect our intros to be thoughtful and to be creative and to engage in critical thinking. And then even the way that we compose that material, the way that we put together our poise and our poetry programs are meant to sustain an argument. And so, I think that's a key piece of it. But also, and going back to the interp side, which you and I both love, to
Yes.
both perform in and to coach in. But I think an emotional awareness, an ability to use emotion and levels and layers of emotional engagement, and being able to tell stories and effectively engage in an audience and to make them feel something so that they feel moved to change an attitude or change their lives or be inspired. I think those are skills that will affect everybody in very positive ways. And
Definite.
right now, our community is engaged in a lot of dialogue about the role of content warnings, for example, and trigger warnings in this activity, because we're
Yes.
because we're exploring material that is so personal and sensitive and relates to our very nature, our very core of who we are. And we're performing that, and there's a vulnerability attached to that.
Very.
And some of your listeners are probably have listened to some talks by Brene Brown and others that talk about vulnerability and the importance of vulnerability. And so I think all of those are valuable skills that anybody can take away from this activity. Not to mention the fact that if you're in high school and listening to this, or you're a high school coach and listening to your podcast, that there are scholarships available for this. There are still colleges and universities that want to
True.
engage you and want to recruit you and want you to do this activity for a lifetime and carry those skills forward. That confidence, that understanding of who you are and who you want to be and how you perform and how you think critically. And I mean, any career set would value those soft skills, and more employers, that's what they're looking for, especially as education is de-emphasized in terms of which school specifically you go to. I mean, you can take those skills away from a community college environment or a
So
four-year
true.
degree and be able to apply those, whether you go to law school or whether you go directly into the workplace after
Yeah.
school.
That's a really great point, and I definitely would agree with you a lot there. I'm glad you mentioned the trigger warnings too, because I think that the episode will come out before yours, but we did talk a little bit about like the use of trigger warnings in speech and debate. It should be just a no-brainer question as being able to use those, especially for very sensitive topics. So yes, I totally um, am backing that up, and in regards to everything you said, I think that is a very great answer, and how we can generally use like speech and debate, how it's seen, how it can be relevant to like our careers and our life in the future. And speaking of life in the future, I guess the question is, uh, did you tell us a little bit about your journey? Did you immediately, like out of college, just say, you know what? Yes, I want to be a forensics coach. I'm gonna find a way to go to Ripon and be that coach and make it happen. Or did you, did you say like, oh man, I studied finance, and then you realized it wasn't for you? What's your journey into becoming a coach?
I'll try to keep it as short as I can, but I did speech in high school. There was no debate team as part of my speech activities, and I competed in Iowa, and we have small group as well as individual events. So I participated in one act plays
Okay.
and ensemble acting groups and readers theater and that kind of thing, as well as a variety of different individual events. I knew I wanted to continue it into college, and I did. And actually, my speech coach, Marty Feeney, who at the for a very young age of 71, just passed away actually.
Wow.
So a shout out to Marty, who
Definite.
passed away short just a couple of weeks ago. And um, yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about him of late. But yeah, he was the one who recruited me to come to college in Iowa Central College, and he said, "Hey, we should get involved in this and become really competitive." And he had a quirky style and personality, and loved the activity, and loved hitting the road with students, and
Awesome.
we very competitive and really enjoyed that experience. I did take a break after undergrad because I was kind of tired of college. I never imagined I would go to grad school. Certainly never imagined teaching college students. It just was not on my radar. I just figured, you know what, I'm going to go into the workplace. This was a great experience. And then a friend of mine who went to Central encouraged me to apply to grad schools. And so after grad school, I then got the job at Ripon, and I really enjoyed that. I had a great experience there. A lot of great administrators, a fantastic department chair, Jody Roy. Shout out to her. Who also has had a long and storied history in this activity as a former NDT debater. And so anyway, I went to Ripon, 17 years there, 3 years at the NSDA, and now 3 years at Simpson. Yeah, I never imagined that this was going to be my journey, and certainly in the early days of teaching, when you're teaching courses called persuasion and mass media, you cannot imagine a day when social media would become so prevalent. And
Yes.
that now I'm teaching classes that are so geared toward the technology side of it, and have for many years. But once upon a time it was computer mediated communication, and I was teaching classes where students would study email listserv communications and
Wow.
that kind of thing. And I distinctly remember at Ripon introducing students to something that was in beta at the time. And I said, "How many of you have ever heard of this?" And no student raised their hand. And I said, "Well, I'm going to teach you how to use this." because this is going to revolutionize the future of search. And I said, it's called Google. And none of them had heard of Google, of course. And I had to teach them how to use Google, even though it's
Wow.
obviously very intuitive. But and now it's our favorite verb. But at the time, it was a brand new technology. It was in beta, and we were all used to Yahoo and web crawler and Alta Vista and some other browsers, and so it was just a revolutionary change from Yahoo searches to go to Google. And so
That's
yeah, I
so
mean,
cool.
it's a long, long history of and even the way we research and find material, of course, now, and the way we research is so very different. It's so much easier to find material and so much readily available that students can have access to. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's been a long and incredible history. I think one of the keys to longevity in the activity is to recognize, even if I don't agree with some of the trends in the activity, to recognize the importance of the growth and development of an activity. It does need to continuously progress,
True.
and so when I mentioned the trigger warning and content warning, for example, I was just thinking about the past when we quite frankly, it used to be you just sucked it up. I mean, if you heard something that might have offended you personally, nobody thought that it would be okay to leave a room. Nobody thought that it would ever be okay to, in some cases, to even explore it. It was very cutting edge to
True.
explore some of the topics that we take for granted today, because you never knew how somebody was going to react. But there was no forewarning unless you wanted to write it into an intro, and that was pretty unusual back then. So the growth of the activity, the way that it's changed, the way that technology has changed all of us, and how we experience anxiety and rates of depression, and our whole psychological makeup has been affected by the engagement we have with technology, and how we do this activity. And you look at the debate side. I don't know how much you follow the debate side, but
Well,
um,
I do speech and debate, so
yeah.
I coach LDNPF too. So yes,
Oh, okay.
definitely.
Well, you've seen even in those communities the changes with regard to how we use technology. Do we use the
Yes.
internet in rounds, and is that an advantage? And do we disclose our cases in advance, and does that affect
Yes.
education? And to what extent is that okay or not okay? And is it, to what extent can we be performative? Can what extent can we be theoretical? And so
Very
we've
true.
got splinters in that community in terms of what is right and what is wrong. So it's all part of the growth. We all grow and experience things in different ways. Each facet of the activity has grown and changed over the last 3 decades, and we all have to kind of grow and change with it.
Yeah.
Because it's changing. The way that we use our voices has changed dramatically in this time.
I very much so appreciate that answer. I think you definitely hit the nail on the head, or whatever that expression is.
Yep,
About
that's the expression.
okay,
Yep.
you definitely you definitely hit the nail on the head when it comes to the like just the watching the growth and kind of the importance of growth, no matter what. Not, I guess not unfortunately, but just you have to be cognizant of the fact that, like, technology and things will always change,
Hmm.
and I remember even being, I don't remember how old I was, but it had to be somewhere around Google's popularity, because I still remember, not using Google, and always was like,
Hmm.
well, Ask Jeeves is so much better, and stuff like that. And I'm sure every single person who's under like 20 has no idea probably about Axe Jeeves. And like, that was the best Google ever, and like, it's just cool to see how, technology does change, though. Now you have the internet, you have the access, and in the past you used to have the internet, but it was in some weird form in a book or something. I think that's what they called them. So it was a lot different, and just seeing the growth. And even now, I think I spoke to a couple people in like different episodes that I've had, and we talked about, how things are progressing to like online speech and debate. Like, I have a online league now, where I'll be running a beta tournament, actually, in a couple months, where students will be able to literally like compete online. And that's so crazy, that, like, to alleviate travel and all of the other things, and like give you an opportunity to compete even more, is just really crazy. And like, with the online access is just amazing. So I'm really excited to see how things are going to change in the future. I can't wait. Hopefully, I'm still alive by the time we have like our first like NSDA nationals, but it's done through VR. So that'll be really, really, really amazing to see and gander upon. Um, I had to save kind of my last question for the end because I think some people would be excited about this depending on what category they do and who they are and things of that nature. But you were a TEDx speaker, and that is like absolutely amazing because I know that like TED Talks are still like the like especially I don't know if every I think well it depends on like I know the CFL or NCFL they have like the category called oratorical
Mhm.
or oratorical declamation, and then in California we have a category called oratorical interpretation. And it's I think that's the it's just, I'm used to just calling it OI, but I think it's like oratorical interpretation where people are taking things that are usually like graduation speeches, TEDx talks, and for most of these kids it's pretty much all TEDx talks. So they're taking some of the best speeches that they see online and interpreting that to the best of their ability. I'll be really excited one day when I'm in a round and someone's like, "I'm gonna do this talk by Deano Pape," and I'm like, "What?" How did it feel being a TED talker? Where did where did you do the talk, and how much did you get paid? No, I'm just kidding. But like how did it feel, and like what exactly did you talk about?
I talked about the effects of social media and cell phone technologies on our lives. It's something that I'm very passionate about. After all these years of coaching students to find their voice, I'm excited to use my voice in order to talk about the effects, what the research is showing us with regard to social media and cell phones and how they affect us at a variety of different levels, both positively and negatively. And so
Sure.
I did that in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. So it's TEDx Fond du Lac. If folks want to check it out, if you go to YouTube and you run a search for my name,
Okay.
it's the only thing that shows up. So it'll be real easy to find. Yeah, it's about 20 minutes, 21 minutes, and it's the talk that I gave. It was great fun. The audience really got into it. They laughed at my jokes, and I think the story that I tell about a student I met in Dallas, Texas, is a good anchor story to tell throughout. And I look forward to doing some additional ones. For folks who aren't aware, who are listening to the podcast, a lot of people are familiar with TED and TED Talks, but TEDx is a local event. And so if folks look for TEDx events in large cities, wherever they are, there's TEDx everything, really. TEDx Des Moines and TEDx Oshkosh and
Oh,
TEDx Madison. And so they're in cities all over the globe. And if you run a search for them, most of them are put online. The reason I bring that up is because others can certainly check out TEDx events and can apply to them. And you don't have to have 20 years of experience. In a lot of cases, you can tell your story. If you have a unique story to tell and you have, as they say, an idea worth spreading, then folks should fill out the applications. And there's a full process where they look through your applications and they screen you and you have to submit outlines and manuscripts and all of that.
okay.
But eventually, it is a manuscripted situation, and you do have to memorize it. That's one of the skills that we teach in forensics that some people think
Yes.
is pointless, but nevertheless, you do have to make sure that you have memorized or effectively memorized your TEDx talk to match the script that you submit. But anyway, if you have an idea where spreading, folks should definitely check it out. I had a great experience. I really enjoyed it, and I've gotten some other speaking gigs from it where people have watched it and asked me to come in to talk to their business or to their schools and talk to students about it or talk to adults about it as well, and how workplace technology is changing, how the generations are affecting workplace change is something I'm also very interested in and have talked to some folks about. So Yeah, so it's been a great ride, and I look forward to doing another TEDx talk down the line.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And definitely shout out to TedX. So yeah, apply to everybody who's listening if you do think you have an idea worth spreading.
Hmm.
That is awesome, and I think that that is actually the perfect culmination of being able to finish with the episode that we have.
Very good.
I think that. First, I'd like to say, to everybody who's listening, my usual spiel. So, join in the conversation. Feel free to leave a comment down below. DM me on Instagram, TikTok, the Forensics Guy, and share this episode. Give it a 5 star, whether you're listening to it on Apple Podcast or Spotify or wherever you listen to your podcast. Definitely feel free to give it a great rating and share it with all of the other students, alumni, and coaches that you believe would be benefited by this. And another big, big, big thank you to Deano Pape for coming out and being able to share his insight on everything in the speech and debate community and all of the great things that he has done and the great things I know that he hopes you all will do as listeners. Once again, thank you so much, sir, for coming on. It's been an honor to have you. And for everybody else, just keep spreading the word, keep doing your thing, and I will catch you all later. Peace out.